Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. An American Airlines flight with 64 people on board collides mid-air with a military helicopter carrying 3 soldiers over Washington, D.C., with both crashing into a river. Dozens of bodies have been recovered so far. Russia launches a drone barrage targeting cities across Ukraine. The attack killed at least 4 people in a residential block in the eastern Ukrainian city of Sumy. A fire breaks out at Switzerland's oldest luxury hotel in the heart of Geneva, forcing evacuations. No casualties reported. Taiwan is set to hire at least 1,000 Indian workers this summer under an agreement signed with New Delhi last year. Taiwan aims to end labour shortages in its domestic industries with Indian talent. And Namibia's unemployment rate crosses 36% as per the latest official data. The Southern African nation of about 3 million now has one of the highest unemployment levels in the world. Hello and welcome. We start with the Democratic Republic of Congo, where Rwanda-backed M23 rebels are advancing further into the country's mineral-rich eastern region. After capturing Goma, the largest city in the east, they seem to have now opened a new front. Locals say they have now marched into the neighbouring South Kivu province. So far, the fighting was centred in North Kivu province, where rebels have seized the capital city of Goma. It has resulted in intense clashes with several dead and thousands displaced. But the rebels are going beyond the boundaries of this region, and they are doing so without facing much resistance, as the Congolese troops have been weakened in front of the rebels. Just around 10 days ago, the M23 rebels made a spectacular resurgence since 2022 and seized Minova, a commercial hub in the region. After that, they marched into the provincial capital of Goma, which sits on the border with Rwanda and is a key trade and humanitarian hub. Now they have entered into the adjacent South Kivu province, where locals say they have seized the Kinizar and Mukwija districts. The Congolese army has reportedly established their main line of defense in the city of Kavumu in the province. But if this defense line is breached, then the rebels can enter the provincial capital of Bukavu, just like Goma. Now, both of these eastern provinces are rich in precious minerals and have been at the heart of more than 30 years of conflict involving scores of armed groups. But the fighting with the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels has been the most intense. With the capture of Goma, several Congolese soldiers have surrendered and fled to Rwanda. Abandoned Congolese army uniforms and equipment could be seen littering the streets on Goma's roads. Now, not just this, but around 300 foreign mercenaries hired by DRC to counter the M23 offensive have also surrendered and are on their way back home. Despite the heavy losses, the DRC President Felix Tshisekedi has vowed to mount a vigorous, coordinated response to reclaim territory seized by the M23 rebels.
Rwanda's defense forces, in support of their M23 puppet, are continuing their terrorist enterprise on our territory, sowing terror and desolation among our populations. I share your pain and indignation at these barbaric attacks. These acts are not only an attack on the Republic, but an affront to the history and dignity of our people. In these difficult times, I call on you to be resilient and, above all, to resist.
Yesterday, Tshisekedi snubbed a virtual urgent regional summit with the Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame. Though Kagame has talked of need for ceasefire and dialogue, one of his senior diplomats has warned that the M23 will continue to advance in the eastern DRC and even beyond. Rwanda is in fact facing an intense international pressure to curb its support to the rebels. The United States has urged urgent UN action to halt the offensive by the Rwandan troops and the M23. The UK says its $1 billion in aid to Rwanda could be under threat due to the DRC invasion. Russia has warned Rwandan-backed M23 rebels to stay clear of the DRC, while China has also urged Rwanda to withdraw its support to the rebels. Once seen as an ethnic conflict between the Tutsis and Hutu militias, it has now turned into a fight for vital and precious minerals. Rwanda is accused by the DRC of using the rebels to loot the DRC's mineral wealth. Will its army and the M23 rebels further invade into the DRC territory? Now, for more on this, we have with us Stephen Buchanan-Clark, head of the Peace and Security Program at Good Governance Africa. He is joining us live from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Alyson. Thank you for having me.
Now, what are the strategic implications of the M23 rebels advancing into South Kivu? And how does this shift the dynamics of the conflict compared to their previous gains in North Kivu?
Well, on Tuesday, the provisional governor of South Kivu confirmed the capture of Minova. Minova, as you mentioned in the opening, is an economic hub, but it's also it's a town along a key supply route to Goma, which offers a lot of strategic advantages to M23 as they can stop the resupply of the armed forces of the DRC. M23 have also taken control of Mbishi, Numbi, and Shanje in South Kivu. All three of these towns are built around tin, tungsten, tantalum, and other precious mineral deposits, which the M23 can now use to fund their operations. But overall, I suppose it looks like these recent offenses in Goma and further south are designed to maximize Rwanda's negotiation position within future peace talks. It could be enough, perhaps, to force the DRC government to engage in talks directly with M23, something that Tshisekedi has been very reluctant to do until now.
Right. And with Kinshasa vowing a vigorous response, what military and diplomatic options does the DRC realistically have? And how might this escalation impact the regional stability, particularly with relations with Rwanda?
Well, I think military options available to President Tshisekedi are very limited. Kinshasa has, for decades, been reliant on foreign forces and are reliant now on MONUSCO, SADC forces, and private military companies for their security. The armed forces of the DRC are very weak and just frankly no match to the M23, which, as you mentioned, is backed by not just financially by Rwanda, but also in terms of weapon systems, intelligence support, operational guidance, to the point really where they fall under the control of the Rwandan Defense Force. MONUSCO is a UN peacekeeping force, and their mandate will not allow them to engage in widespread offensive operations to dislodge M23. And SAMM, particularly given recent losses, really I don't think has the military capacity or the appetite at the moment to go on offensive operations against M23. Even the capture of private military companies by the RDF and M23, or the surrounding of private military company battalions, might even prevent further PMCs from looking to get engaged in the DRC. I think, diplomatically, Tshisekedi has withdrawn his ambassadors from Rwanda and expelled Rwandan civil servants from the DRC. I think his best bet probably is to really engage Western nations to go beyond just words and actually take actions that cost Kagame.
Right.
You know, the UN, the EU have come out and called for ceasefire and the removal of forces, but you know, I think he needs to push for things that will actually hurt the Kagame regime, like sanctions, reevaluation of aid to Rwanda, those sorts of tangible things that have a tangible impact on Rwanda.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights in the latest on the DRC.
Thanks, Alyson.
Moving on now, it looks like illegal immigrants from Latin America and Asia are not the only ones who are on President Donald Trump's radar for deportations from the United States. Several African immigrants may also soon be deported. Now, in a document published by the United States Immigration Office, there are over 1,000 of the illegal immigrants from Africa in the United States that could reportedly face deportation back to their home country in the coming days. Now, the list, which shows data as of November of 2024, indicates that there are over 1,445,000 non-citizens in the United States that are going to be deported back to their home countries. Out of them, Mexico has topped the list with over 250,000 individuals facing deportation orders from the United States, followed by El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua, among others. From Africa, out of the 47 countries that have been listed by the Immigration Office in the document, Somalia tops the list with more than 4,000 immigrants ready to face deportation from the United States. This is closely followed by citizens belonging to Mauritania, Nigeria, Ghana, Guinea, Cameroon, Ethiopia, Senegal, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Now, the document's publication and the likelihood of deportation come at a time when the Trump administration, which took office earlier this month, has initiated an aggressive immigration enforcement campaign in the United States. President Donald Trump has swiftly enacted sweeping changes to the U.S. immigration policy. Since his January 20th inauguration, his administration has launched what it calls the largest deportation operation in American history. Trump says these actions are needed after millions of migrants illegally entered during his predecessor Joe Biden's presidency. In his first week in office, Trump has signed multiple executive orders targeting immigration, including one declaring a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. The administration has deployed around 4,000 active duty troops to reinforce the southern border and has also begun deportation flights using military aircraft. Washington has also urged countries across the world to accept the return of their nationals who have been illegally residing in the United States. While some have taken their nationals back, others have shown resistance. In Africa, Nigeria has expressed its readiness to welcome back Nigerian deportees from the United States. Reports suggest that the West African country has established an interagency committee to manage the process, facilitating necessary arrangements for Nigerians who may face deportation. But while there have not been any deportations from the United States to Africa reported yet, fears and concerns are growing that after Mexicans and the South Americans, African immigrants are going to be the next target of the Trump administration. And while the United States is deporting illegal migrants to some African countries, it is also forging new ties with others. Now, in the latest, the U.S. has signed a key security agreement with Algeria, which has been traditionally closer to Russia. Last week, the U.S. and Algeria's military leaders signed a new Defense Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU. The agreement seeks closer collaboration between the troops of both countries. They intend to collaborate on areas like maritime security, counterterrorism, military training, and military healthcare initiatives. Though typically for the Pentagon, MOUs are legally non-binding and only describe intentions. The US officials have called this agreement one of its kind and a major shift in Algerian foreign policy. Algeria, the largest nation in Africa, has had closer ties to Moscow since the Soviet era. To this day, as well, it continues to rely on Moscow for a lot of its military equipment. But lately, Algiers has had some doubts regarding this relationship. The reason? Russia's growing influence in Africa's Sahel region. Now, Algeria borders the conflict-ridden states of the Sahel region, which is a center of Islamist insurgency, political instability, violence, and food insecurity. Russia has increased its influence in the junta-led nations of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Its troops are also present here fighting insurgency. But Russia's warming up to Sahel juntas has irked Algeria. Now, Sahel juntas, particularly Mali, accuse Algeria of supporting separatist rebels in its north. Algiers considers the growing coups a threat to regional instability and also the presence of Russian mercenaries, which it believes is bolstering juntas. Russia has also been slow producing and supplying defense systems to Algeria amidst its war with Ukraine. So now it is reconsidering its ties with Moscow. US officials say the latest deal with Algeria was on the cards for some time, but Algiers kept on delaying it. But now Algeria has agreed to collaborate with the US, and they are calling it the Trump effect. Algeria reportedly is keen to build ties with US President Donald Trump, even though his last term was not very good for it. Now, in his last term, Trump prioritized ties with Algeria's neighbor and rival, Morocco. Algeria backs separatists in Western Sahara, a territory claimed by Morocco, and Trump recognized Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara in exchange for it normalizing ties with Israel. Now, this came as a big jolt for Algeria, but it now reportedly wants to overcome the barriers with Trump, and hosting US military officials is a big signal toward that. Some also believe that the US-Algeria cooperation can spill over into other domains and could lead a narrow rapprochement between Algeria and Morocco. After all, the US president wants to be remembered as a peacemaker. And for our last story for today, let's shift our attention to East Africa. Kenya has suspended the manufacturing permits of Chinese steel maker Rwanda. And why is that so? Because the East African country has found the company producing poor quality steel bars that are necessary for powering construction in the country. In a public notice, Kenya's Bureau of Standards said it had seized substandard products from the Chinese firm's premises that posed a significant risk to construction safety and public welfare. It further said that Rwandai's operations had also been suspended until the company demonstrated full compliance with the required standards and recalled all of its distributed products from the market. Now, Rwanda Steel was set up in Kenya in September of 2023. It was started with an investment of $30 million from a Chinese private enterprise, and the company mainly produces steel products widely used in the construction business in Kenya. The suspension of its permit comes at a time when the William Ruto government has heightened its grip over Chinese companies and local companies that have investments from China. In recent months, the government has conducted investigations into tax evasion by Chinese firms operating in the country. Last year, Kenya's Revenue Authority raided 2 Chinese cigarette marketers in tax fraud probe. Moreover, the revocation of the permit also comes amid an ongoing effort by the Kenyan government to curb the sale of substandard products in its markets. This is to ensure construction safety and the protection of public welfare in the country. To give some context, the East African country is in the midst of a construction boom. However, corruption has enabled some contractors to cut corners or to skirt regulations, putting public safety in jeopardy. The high demand for housing, especially in Kenya's urban setting, has also led to some property developers bypassing building regulations to cut costs and allegedly increase profits. This has resulted in many building collapses in recent years and has also led to the deaths of innocent people. In September of 2022, 5 people were killed when a 6-story building collapsed in a town on the outskirts of the capital of Nairobi. In April of 2016, 49 people were killed when a 6-floor apartment building crumbled in the northeast of the capital after days of heavy rain caused by floods and landslides. Now, between 2009 and 2019, a total of 86 buildings valued at over 2.4 billion Kenyan shillings, or over $18 million, collapsed. Reports have blamed the collapse on poor workmanship, lack of regulatory oversight, and the use of substandard materials, mainly cement and steel. They have also blamed inadequate site investigations and rapid population growth. But despite the Kenyan government increasing its efforts to curb the sale of poor quality materials in the markets, buildings have continued to collapse in the East African country, risking the lives of innocent people. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.